moving from education financing in Namibia, we look at corporate social investment expenditure, which continues to grow in South Africa, amounting to 6.9 billion rand in 2012. In addition to this, education continues to receive the most support and the largest share of CSI spend, but the challenge of poor education standards continue to persist in rural South Africa. Joining me in studio to look at an innovative approach to academic performance is Kagiso Trust Chairman Zwo Navadalu. Zwo, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Very interestingly, coming from that chat with Quentin to find out that, in fact, Kagiso Trust is the founder of South Africa's NSFAS program.
Yes, actually, we conceptualized the bursary program when we were still getting a lot of support from the European Union. It used to be called Education Aid Program. In fact, a lot of the South African leadership who actually graduated at universities benefited from that program.
A very big program, of course, in South Africa. But if we go back to the Kagiso Trust, and in particular to the Beyers Naudé program that we're talking about today, talk us through how this program differentiates itself from other programs that we see in the educational landscape, and in particular in trying to raise the standard of education in rural South Africa.
Yes, you just spoke about the CSI funding, where you have got a lot of money that goes into education, but maybe the impact is not as great as the resources which are there. What we do with the Beyers Naudé, we call it a whole school development program, which means that we look at all the other elements which would make a school work or function much better. And the foundation of that is really relationships within the school. Whether you have a buy-in from the learners, from the educators, from the school principal, then you bring in the issue of parents as well. And once you do have some kind of a compact, you know, an understanding of what that school is supposed to do, what are the key deliverables, you actually have a very good foundation on which to be able to build a better learner attainment program on that. So once we do that, we get that right, we then look at other gaps within the schools. And it might be the area of teachers themselves in terms of skilling them much better. And then while that process is going on, you begin to see a dramatic improvement in learner attainment in the results. And then we then reward schools that are performing better through infrastructure. So we don't really begin with infrastructure. And if you look at a lot of programs, you see to invest in building relationships is a very demanding and tiring kind of an activity. So very often it's easy to just throw money at a problem. But we really get involved and engaged with the school first and foremost, and then with the whole community. So you get a very wonderful kind of ownership that goes around the community as well.
So on the far end, or on the outcome end, we begin to see this different thinking where you bring in infrastructure based on performance that the school has attained. But if we go back, Zwo, to the matric pass rate last year, which was sitting at its highest at 73.9. I understand that Kagiso Trust sets a benchmark of 80% before the infrastructure comes in. This must speak volumes of the robustity or of the programs that you're actually implementing to turn around the performance. Help me understand what drives this optimism, and what are the time frames? How long does it take to turn around a school?
In fact, it doesn't take as long as many people think. You know, the school can be turned around within a year.
Yeah.
You know, it has to do with a lot of commitment, clearly, as I say, at a school level, and the way these relationships are working together with the learners and so on. But we also depend quite a lot on you see, our model build on partnership with the whole government, precisely because we're actually targeting to uplift the educational attainment of poor learners. And when we look at sustainability of that, it is really government that is providing education to the poorest of the poor. And whatever investment we did, we actually strengthened the efforts of government in partnership with them. So while you get the whole team coming together, the MEC, very often the minister as well, you know, you actually have a very good team that actually works together, and you're likely to produce results. So it doesn't take long.
To turn around that
No,
school.
no, actually it doesn't take long. You know, you find there's a lot of vibrancy, there's an excitement, and there's ownership, there's buy-in, and actually people are going to surprise you at the way they are able to reach quite their fullest potential with a lot of odds and a lot of constraints facing them.
I understand that the nuts and bolts of the investment that is being made in this particular year is to the tune of around 13 million rand. Now, that isn't small change. How have you managed to bring in the private sector? And I'm assuming that the funding comes from the private sector. In light of just the donor fatigue that business probably has when it comes to throwing money at education.
Well, we are a very unique NGO, and I think it's quite important. We are not like other NGOs that rely on donor funding. You see, when the European Union, in the past, during the apartheid period, we received a lot of funding from the European Union. But then, when we moved towards democracy, they threatened to withdraw, rightfully so, because they wanted to fund government. We then came as an NGO because of our passion for development and alleviating poverty. We then came out with a strategy where we started an investment company.
Right.
You see, very often when you talk about CSI, you talk about business people who are making an investment into education or into social projects. With us, it was the other way around. You had an NGO where we started an investment company. So we actually use our own money, our own dividends. We don't beg. But having said that, I think we are moving into building models of partnership where we actually attract a lot of other investments from other companies. For instance, I think it's important to mention, it has been said before, that out of the Beyers Nodi, we have actually concluded a partnership with Shanduka Investments, where, and then the government has come into that, where we're going to actually implement a 400 million rand program in the Free State only, in that particular province. So we do build on partnerships, but by and large, it's our own resources that we actually raise to be able to plow into education. So we're very unique as far as that is concerned.
So a very interesting conversation indeed, and we will obviously be following the work of Kagiso Trust to see how you are able to replicate this model and leverage off economies of scale. As we know, in South Africa, there are just so many provinces that not only need a qualitative education boost, but also need the infrastructure that this particular model brings and differentiates itself with. Thank you for joining us. Of course, that was Kagiso Trust Chairman Zwo Nevatalu, and we're going to take a very short break now. But when we return, we pick up on some of the most important comments made at the inaugural BRICS Business Council yesterday. Don't go away.